Hi, this is Rodrigo from Frame Freak Studio, and this is the Creative Hostler Show. Today our guest is Ari Gibson, one of the co-founders of Team Cherry, which is a video game studios who created Hollow Knight, which is like a massive hit. This is an indie game, pretty much started with a very small team. However, the results of the game and the game itself was so great that it became viral really fast. And we are really close to get one of the DLCs that I'm waiting a lot to play, because it's been quite a while since I was like this addicted to a video game. So welcome, Ari.
Thank you, Rodrigo.
So first of all, I would like to ask you about the history, your history and the team history. How did you meet all of you, and how this project started?
Sure thing. Yeah, so the company is Team Cherry. The company is actually just myself and my co-director, William Pellin, who, if you can hear some clicking, is working in the background over there on some upcoming content right now. And for the game that we just released earlier this year, Hollow Knight, we had one other member, David Kazi, who worked with us for the 2 years, and he did a lot of the technical kind of development. So I originally came from a background of 2D animation or 3D animation before that, which maybe we can talk about a bit later. But for this, William and I started it as a little hobby project on the side, developed the game, this small prototype game that was eventually Hollow Knight, and it kind of expanded to the point where we formed a independent game company around it. And then we went from there, 2 years of development, the game's out, and we're now in the process of supporting the game.
Awesome. I actually went to Newgrounds and found the first version of Hollow Knight, like Hungry Knight, and I was like, oh wow, like this comes from way back.
Yeah, that was maybe maybe that was 5 years ago now, but that was a Game Jam game, and then so it was done in 72 hours. It was kind of a community event style thing. There are quite a few of these that happen throughout the year, and we did that one, and we did a few more, and the third or fourth of them was Hollow Knight. What you can probably recognize in the Hungry Knight game that exists on YouTube on Newgrounds is that the sprite for the main character is the same, and that's just because we were sort of lazy in the later game and decided to rip it out of that one.
Nice. Well, it is actually a nice character. Like I really love the design. Like when I showed it to my friends, it was like really amazing to see. So I think you had a really good character to start with.
Oh, cool. Thank you. Yeah, I think it worked a little bit. Worked largely to our benefit. That probably a lot of the characters that we designed around that main character fit that style, and that style was really dead simple. So because it was so simple, and because it was the primary influence for the aesthetic of the rest of the game, we never had to do anything or create anything that was super elaborate or super taxing, which meant we could create lots and lots of weird little characters and, traditionally animate them all in 2D without killing ourselves.
Definitely. And you mentioned that you started in 3D. Why did you choose to do this game into 2D animation instead of 3D? And did the idea of making it in 3D pass through your minds?
Never, ever did it pass through my mind. I don't think it passed through William's either. So William's background was in Flash animation, web stuff. So he's actually quite a proficient 2D animator in the Flash style himself. I did a lot of 3D. So I worked in a studio, and we did a lot of 3D, kind of higher end 3D stuff for video games, a lot of cutscene work. which is great, and it was super entertaining. But throughout that process, I taught myself traditional animation, 2D animation, and I think probably I just never looked back at a point. It's just so much more. Maybe, well, achievable sounds like the boring answer, but it's certainly more achievable in a small team. But the brilliance of it is that you can just do everything yourselves. You don't have to. If we're doing a high-end 3D product, you just have to be so concerned about so many different things. You have to have riggers and surfaces, and you have to worry about rendering, and you have to worry about shader, all that nonsense. You have to animate. You have to model. In 2D, you just draw a picture on a whiteboard, and if it makes you laugh, you're like, cool, all right, that's in. And 2 days later, you've had it, you've animated it, it's moving and acting and has a weird voice that we've recorded. So there's like an instant feedback, and there's the wonderful, just the connection, like the warmth that you get out of lines that have been drawn by hand.
Nice. Also, what is it about 2D animation that you like over 3D?
Well, I mean, the primary one is probably what I just mentioned, which is that as an individual or as two people, we can go and create a massive world that feels alive. And I feel like perhaps in 3D, that's a much larger undertaking. You can do highly stylized sort of 3D work as a smaller team, and you can make some very effective things. But for us, there's that immediacy with 2D. Also, technically, it's just so simple on our brains. You just don't have things breaking ever, really, and that's like a wonderful thing. So, yeah. 3D is just like a process of, everything's held together by string, whereas I think with 2D, you draw it and that's what you get.
I do understand the feeling. I actually met my partner years ago. Well, first in the university. However, we didn't got really along there. We just met each other, but then we had to work together in a TV production company, and we were friends there with a guy who, this guy did 2D, the other guy, another guy that was there did 3D animation, and I was the tech support there back then. And the 3D animation gave so much problems, and the computer breaking, and it gave me nightmares.
Yeah, that just goes with the territory. It is getting better, I will say. As 3D, as 3D has obviously come a long way, and you have a lot of these real-time engines, and people make things in them now, and some of those stresses are being mitigated, but generally it's just a much more complicated undertaking.
Also, did somebody else help you out with the animation of all the characters and all the game?
Not in this one. No. So, but that's part of the joy of it, is that I can do all of that, and then William and I together can do the designs, which is always enjoyable. So I suppose maybe that gives it a nice consistency as well, that we're not having to manage maintaining consistency, which has always been one of the difficult things about working with teams, even in 2D. When you have different artists who have their own styles and they bring their own styles to it. Yeah, and we like working like that. Keeps it all our own.
Awesome. And just to make clear, because some people know about this, some people don't. Pretty much, Team Cherry is a team of 4 people, including marketing and including music, that made this game possible, right?
Yeah, or is that 5 people? So technically, yeah, I should mention we have a composer and sound designer. That's Christopher Larkin, and we work with him. So he's independent. He actually does a lot of other very impressive stuff and has worked on other games. And then we have Matt Griffin, who is in California, and he does a lot of our PR and marketing, which just means talking to people because we're so busy making the thing. and drawing weird pictures that we don't have time to do that.
First of all, before I forget, please congratulate Christopher, because for me, my uncle, when I was a kid, raised me with classical music, Beethoven and things like that, and Mozart. So music for me is one of the very few things that I consider sacred. And the music of Hollow Knight, I just completely love that. Like, I think that helps a lot for me to get so addicted into this game.
Oh, thank you. And I'll have to pass it on. Yeah, well, it works for us as well, because probably like the music, it's so grand. Like you said, it's just got this classical style. It gives everything a scale and a sophistication that just probably as imagery it doesn't have. So he's probably like he's perhaps the largest or got the largest level of responsibility for making it feel like a grand like adventure that you get to go on. Where we're just making simple little drawings and funny little characters.
The other reason why I have so massive respect, like when I figured out that it was just this small team that made it happen, and I got Hollow Knight in Steam because it was like a recommendation coming up a lot for me. But then I started looking up more about the project, and I found out the Kickstarter. And probably you know about this. There was this guy from Capcom who created Mega Man. I don't remember his name, but he launched a Kickstarter for a game called Mighty Number 9, which was supposed to be a similar kind of game style, something like that. And this guy got more than $10 million to get this game done, and it was so bad. It was so bad. And then I look at the Kickstarter you did, and you got like $36,000 or something like that, but created this absolutely awesome masterpiece. And then it's like, holy shit, like these guys are like just a small team with this small money, and they did this. Like, how do you do this kind of game with so little? Like, it really amazes me.
Oh, we had a few things that worked for us. One is I lived at my mother's house through production, so that definitely helps for being able to survive for 2 years without a lot of money. The other major part of it though is things like that one, the Mighty Number 9. One, it's 3D, which I briefly talked about before. Tends to have a lot more people. Can be a lot more technically complicated, so it requires more stuff. The other thing is that these are established companies, and a real company has a lot of overheads. If you have employees, you actually have to pay them properly, and you can't be 3 people sort of surviving off nothing, not earning super and all the kind of, and having all of the important insurance that a larger company does. And the truth is that in a real development environment, games do cost that much, and probably that's not even that much. So we may have remained outside of that just by virtue of where we were in our careers. The other thing is we have our own pipeline that I think is like perfectly aligned to the size of our team. We're making a product that is built, this simple 2D game that's like perfectly, the team's strengths are built around it. Whereas that was a case of them perhaps having a team of people that just generally build games, and then having to fit into the mold of that Kickstarter, rather than the opposite of just being able to have exactly the stuff for a 2D Metroid-like game like Hollow Knight.
Also, can you walk me through the process of creation of the game, from like the animation to the coding to creating the history or the lore?
Yeah, it's not a very organized process. what do we just so how do we start? We started with the game jam, like I said, and these game jams have themes. So this one had a cool theme. The theme was Beneath the Surface, and the game Hollow Knight is a big ruined underground kingdom. So hence that gave us a lot of the structure for it. The backbone of it was this 2D Metroid style game. So we had previous games that gave us an idea of that had established a genre, had given us a framework that we knew worked, and we knew that people actually enjoyed playing, and we enjoyed playing. So we knew we started there. We both had animation experience. I was at the time, and sort of still am a bit, had a 2D animation company, which I had with another collaborator. So I had a pipeline for traditional animation that I was used to using. Basically, I say pipeline, that sounds fancy. It just means all the animation is done very quickly in Photoshop, and that is it. So the art comes out like that. William had a program called Stencil that is like a smaller game engine. It's a bit like Game Maker, if you're familiar with that kind of thing. And he had used that quite extensively. So pretty much at that point, it was just about jamming the bits of art that I was making in there and giving it all the correct behaviors per that genre, and then tweaking it to give it its unique elements. The writing that ended up, the writing sort of happened very loosely throughout the whole thing. So we just have a Google Sheet, have like there's all these fancy plugins. We went to this engine called Unity. We had a nice plugin that basically just pulls all the text from a Google Sheet, which means we just, throughout the production, just wrote little bits when we were in cafes or whatever, or in between our other work. And eventually the script got done to coincide with the release, and that was it. So yeah, so nothing too planned. We obviously don't have a producer, if you can't tell by how like loosely I'm talking about the whole thing. But I think that kind of works well to keep us, gives us a creativity and allows us that scope where we can just add things as we come up with funny stuff and or surprising ideas, or go off on weird tangents, and eventually packaged it up and it became that game.
Also, for the people who don't know about this, this game looks like really cute. Like I have a lot of girlfriends who are going insane by the kind of designs of the characters of this game. However, for the people who already are playing this, they know that even though everything looks cute, there is like kind of this dark history or this dark feeling all over the game. Like I still think the group father was a little bit too much. Spoiler alert. But why did you take the decision of making this kind of mix of dark history and combining it with the cute design?
I don't think it wasn't like a conscious intent. It was just, probably originally it was a lot darker generally as an idea. It's all of this stuff just comes out of I kind of think it comes out of the atmosphere around the production of a work, whether that's a film or a game in this instance. So there was this sort of dark concept initially, and the character was a bit ambiguous and could be perceived as cute. But then as we went, we came up with funny stuff or twisted ideas, and we laughed about them. And if we laughed about them, we thought, well, that's probably pretty worth including. So I think the game probably developed humorous elements as it went along, and then humorous elements in a dark world tend to be perhaps like well, not necessarily even funnier, but they're a really dramatic contrast. So they really stand out as being like a refreshing moment amongst a sea of gloomy, dying bugs and dying kingdoms and whatever else is going on in there.
Also, in the first videos, in the first trailers of Hollow Knight, I managed to catch some levels that I haven't seen in the game, and also by playing and trying to get like the 100% completion, which by the way I still cannot defeat the Trail of the Fool.
That's all William. Don't blame me for that one. I did an area called the White Palace, which is like a highly it's like a platformer focused section, and then William did this Colosseum, which is all combat. So we each had our end game difficult bits that we constantly get emails from people raging far too difficult. Which, you know, perhaps they are, but it's a bit, you lose perspective when you're making a game, I think, and you've done it yourself 1,000 times.
I spent a whole Sunday trying to pass the White Palace.
Oh, good. Well, for, you know, that, given it was 4 or 5 days worth of work, if you spent a whole day on it, that's pretty good value for my effort. As long as you're not too angry about it. And it sounds like you did pass it. So
yeah. Pretty much, there was moments of real frustration. Like, I even have the controller right next to me to play anytime, but I remember there were moments where I was so focused, like I had gotten so much focus into the game, like even taking breaths to try to calm down and pass certain area and get to the bench. And then there was these other moments where I was like, for example, there was a whole area that I passed, and then I got to the top and was able to come down through all the souls. And I didn't, for some reason, I overlooked the lever, and I just went down. And I thought that I had hit it or something like that. And when I came down, and I saw like the gates are still up, and that I couldn't hit the light thing, and that I had to go back. It was like, fuck it.
that sounds traumatic. The idea is not to like. I mean, frustration is an inevitable part of it, but the idea is to. It's more about giving people that sense of like reward, of like feeling like they've achieved something, than it is to create something that's so frustrating that they just give up. It's so we're looking for the emotion beyond frustration. We're hoping to create that, but as a result, sometimes that can create anger and frustration along the way.
Definitely. Also, however, the music of the White Palace is one of my favorites. So I found it kind of confusing to have this music that was able to calm me down so much, and on the other hand, like frustrating me so much.
It is an important contrast, I think, to have something nice and pleasant to offset all the horrible death that players are experiencing.
Anyways, the question that I wanted to ask is that I saw in the old trailers many levels that I haven't seen in the game, and also by playing the game, I have gotten to a lot of areas. Like one of the most famous is the Weaver's Den, that we were like, probably I spent a lot of time there trying to find out what to do. So I wanted to ask you, are these all parts that are going to make sense with new DLCs that you're going to launch in the future? And these levels that we saw in the initial trailers were something that you still plan to include into the game, or is something that you scratch or kind of half and half?
It's probably a mix. Some we like, some we just cut because we just didn't like. We just didn't think they worked that well. Some elements, yes, definitely, we're planning to develop in future. Some threads, like narrative threads that you can see, like perhaps like that Weaver's Den and things like that. you could probably expect that there'll be more elaboration in upcoming stuff. Saying that, I have to be very vague, because our rule on this is to not say too much until something comes out that people can explore. Because half the fun of it is watching everyone online piece together all the narrative bits and the suggestions that are being made. And you get those hour-long lore videos by someone on YouTube, and they're like well edited and funny and sometimes surprising, but often incredibly accurate to things that are only very vaguely suggested in the game. So that keeps us very entertained while we're sitting in front of our computer screens working.
Definitely, I have seen people that have gone as far as to pretty much tear down apart the game to find like all the notes inside the development code and found secrets that still are not there in the game. Like I found one guy found like more pieces of the poem by Monomon, one of the characters there, and I was like, damn, like people are like really into this game.
Yeah, maybe it's that you just leave questions unanswered, or like leave and it's always very engaging. Even for ourselves, I think we really like that more than having everything, like having the book closed at the end of the experience, so there's nothing really to discuss or to explore. Yeah, so hopefully we achieve that.
I definitely think you did. Also, I remember when I first came into this idea of doing a video game, it was with Half-Life 1. I got it, and it had like the package to try to do the games using the assets of the game itself. And it was so hard. And then years later, came this thing called RPG Maker. And I was able to, like, that was my first real test into creating something that actually worked and that I understood at least the basics on how to create. However, I saw your interview in Japan, and yeah, I thought it was like, yeah, this makes sense. Although I haven't taken like the technical details of the video game in a lot, that it has become easier for people to create their own video games. Like, for example, this game, you did it, like a very small team did it. I think, like, if we go 5 years ago, probably that wouldn't have been the case, maybe, or because we lack the technology. Do you think this is going to keep getting better and better?
Yeah, absolutely it is. I think you mentioned RPG Maker, and William is actually one of the engines that he used back in the day was exactly that, to make a lot of his hobby games. And saying that, you can go and buy games on Steam right now that are successful, that are made in an engine like RPG Maker, which is a very simple engine that makes sort of traditional RPGs, like something on a Super Nintendo. So that's already a hugely lowered barrier for entry, and programs like RPG Maker and Game Maker and Stencil, every year they iterate and they get easier and they get more accessible. Even the big engines, so something like Unreal or Unity, which is maybe a step down from that, they're becoming increasingly accessible. It's very common. In Unreal, even a lot of the programming now is done visually using like a system called, I think it's called Blueprint or Bluepoint. And William uses something very similar called Playmaker in Unity. So we're even avoiding a lot of that hardcore coding that can be, especially for artists who want to get into game development, can be very intimidating. And then the point of all of that is you can just jump in and make a game right now with no experience with coding, and you can follow very simple tutorials on YouTube. You can get free programs. You can make something that works, that's fully functional with relative ease. I mean, like I said, we started doing game jams, and that's 48 hours or 72 hours or maybe a week at the longest to make a full game that someone can play. And that's pretty much the best place to start if you want to jump in there and see if it's something that interests you and something that like is engaging for you. There's certainly a lot of interesting challenges that come along the way as part of it. And yeah.
Definitely. Even us, like here in El Salvador, like this is a third world country, is like very underdeveloped. The closest thing that we have to animation is graphic design in colleges and things like that, and even that is not taught well. Like I'm one of the people who goes against, at least in the industry of creativity and technology, I go against going to college here, because pretty much with that the same money you can learn so much more now in the internet, and there is so much more that you can do, and faster as well, so you save money and time. And this is pretty much how we started like this animation studio, like learning from people, like doing this kind of interviews, reading blogs, being in YouTube, and pretty much we never had like a real kind of traditional education into all of this. There was a lot of messing up things as well, and making a lot of mistakes. But yeah, I do think that we have got to a point that, at least when it comes to video games, technology, creativity, business, that if somebody doesn't have like the resources in their country, or maybe like even if somebody lives in a good country but he doesn't have like the ability to pay and go into a good place, he can still learn it if he has the internet.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I mean, saying that, for some people, a course, whether it's graphic design or I did visual art, or sort of a more of a theoretical art course, sometimes it can just be about giving someone a structure that they might need for motivation, or it might just be about there can be a value in connecting with other people who have similar goals. But certainly the resources are available online if that's the best thing. And they're obviously very easy to access. There's a huge wealth of free, both tutorials and programs to get started in, to do all of that kind of finished work. Certainly, like, you can do world-class finished work with entirely free software these days, which you probably couldn't have said 10 years ago. So yes, as long as you have the internet, and probably internet of a decent speed, I think can be quite valuable.
Definitely. Also, can you call William for a little moment? I would like to ask him a question for a friend of mine.
Yeah, absolutely, I can. I'll just take the headphones off.
Awesome.
William?
Hey.
Awesome. Hello. So I have a couple of friends who have created like a video game school in this country called El Salvador, which is like a country that doesn't have many opportunities, and they have a good group of students there. That their dream obviously is to create a video game such as yours.
Cool.
So I wanted to ask you two things, maybe in the team. First, what are the challenges that you face by creating this kind of game, but with a small team, be it technical limitations or logistical limitations or challenges? And also, what would be your advice for people who don't have many resources into creating their own video games and get started?
Yeah, I mean, as far as like challenges between the difference between like a small and a large team, I couldn't tell you as much because I've only worked in really small teams. But I mean, getting started, there's like this, and I think you kind of, I heard you in the background, you were talking about stuff like RPG Maker or Stencil or Game Maker or Twine even, which is like that text thing, which I downloaded it and started playing around with. It's actually pretty fun. There's a lot of stuff that, you know, you can start teaching yourself things just by, even as like one person by yourself, even if you can't draw or code or something, generally there's something you can grab that like will kind of pick up the slack in that area, and you can just start making small things. Even if it's like fragments of games or like fragments of ideas that you had, you can just start the process of thinking about how to kind of like realize ideas that you have. And then as you kind of keep going with that, you'll kind of learn what you need and what your approach needs to be, and you can start talking to other people that you might know that might be interested, that type of thing.
There's like a big benefit in those smaller engines as well, that they give you a framework, or they give you like limitations that maybe something like Unity or Unreal doesn't have.
Yeah, that's like something like Unity or Unreal. You download it and there's just like a big gray thing, and it's pretty like they do it. I mean, you can get plugins and stuff, but it's pretty kind of like bewildering.
It's just a big void.
Yeah, or something like I mean, because I made like one platformer for Hollow Knight, and that was using Stencil, which has had like a built-in platformer engine and stuff. And like the first version of Hollow Knight just used like a modified version of that.
Yeah, which felt really good.
Yeah,
out of the box.
So I was interested in. I wanted to try making a platformer. I didn't really have any expectations of like releasing an actual game or anything. It's just something I felt like tinkering around with. So I grabbed it and just started playing around with it and making small things and then making slightly bigger things. And yeah, I mean, yeah, you don't need too much. I mean, you don't need, you only need yourself and the computer to get started at the really basic level. And then, it's not, time is the big thing, obviously. So depending on like what your situation is, but if you've got time and like either yourself or one or two other people, you can start making you can make a 1 hour, 2 hour game over the course of a few months just to get started, stuff like that. And that's always the first step.
You can also sell, like, a product can be a 1 or 2 hour game these days, and that's totally okay. We now have a market, all the markets, whether that's a PlayStation or a Steam, will support a game that goes for 2 hours, and that can be fantastic.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely. Something that blew my mind like years ago, because when I came up in front of RPG Maker and we started testing with it, we were in school. But years later, we saw this game in Steam called Cthulhu Saves the Day. And that was done in RPG Maker, and it was selling a lot. And I remember that I saw it, and it's like, oh, damn, like if I had kept learning this thing, like I could have created something similar.
Yeah, I mean, it shows you that. Like, it doesn't... Because people like release a lot of stuff with like the smaller engines, and so you get like a lot of stuff that is just maybe amateurs. It kind of it makes people kind of perceive like those like RPG Maker as something that you can't make a professional product with.
Legitimate.
But you totally can easily. I mean, you can put whatever art you want in there. You can do whatever you want with that stuff.
What resources online would you recommend for people to learn about creating video games?
I didn't really.
This is you, William.
Yeah, I don't know what did I actually use. I just, I mean, maybe the first thing is decide what you kind of, what do you actually want to make? Like, you want to make a platformer, you want to make a puzzle game. Then just start searching for people who are talking about those games, and start thinking about like, the first step is, what do you want to make? So what kind of goes into designing a game like that? What are the ideas that people have had? What other games like are in that genre? And then start thinking about how to make it. Start asking around, like, platformer tutorial, RPG maker, RPG battle tutorial, stuff like that.
There's also really great communities around all of these engines.
Yeah, and in the engine as well.
In the forums, they'll have official forums, and then obviously at a larger scale, whether that's like Reddit or NeoGAF or any of those places. So there's like lots and lots of dialogue happening. And I think for us, because we were new to Unity, which is kind of has some similarities to 3D engines if you've ever used them before, but it's often just, if you get stuck on something, it's often just a case of Googling and hitting the first or second Google search that is either on the Unity forum or on a forum that discusses Unity development, and there's great answers all out there already.
Yeah, we relied much more on that than any kind of like formalized, step-by-step class or anything. I mean, definitely take a look at that stuff because it might be helpful. But most of the time, it's learning how to Google and how to search. And then if that doesn't turn anything up, learning how to ask questions from people who are doing the same sort of thing that you are.
Yeah, and often, I mean, this is common in animation as well, but certainly in game development, everyone is very happy to and very open about answering questions or discussing problems and coming up with ways of solving especially because a lot of these people are, like William said, an individual sitting in their basement in front of their screen, and that communication with other people who are going through the same process is an important element of their lives to keep everyone sane.
Yeah, I mean, for any question, any like coding question you search for it, and some random user has like written up a really extensive like solution for it. It's laid out really nicely. So just like, yeah, that's the bulk of it.
Definitely. I think most problems come from what you just mentioned, that I think people know how to Google, but they do not apply that ability. Because, for example, I know people who many have some extra hobbies. And if in their hobby they found like something that they do not know how to do, they can find that into the internet. But if you take the problem out of the context of that hobby, it's like, oh, I just don't know how to do that. And it's like, you could Google that.
Yeah, it can be hard to know when. Yeah, it's like, where do I start? So like, yeah, it's I mean, that helps when you've got really specific. Once you start having specific questions, it's easy to Google for it. But in terms of just like, where do I start? That's kind of a tricky one. I mean, and the answer I think like that you generally get is stuff like what we said, which is work out what you want to make, find like a simple tool that lets you do that, and then once you start like kind of trying to make anything, then questions, they'll start rolling in, and like you can start asking really specific things once you kind of know what you're aiming for. And then that helps you like focus in on finding stuff that you need.
Definitely. Thank you. Thanks a lot. I wanted to ask this question for my friends at Arcode, since they are putting a lot of passion to make video games. And they are obviously more inclined to the area of the tech and not so much of the animation. But thanks a lot for your time and answer.
Yeah, no worries.
I could hear you typing from over here.
We have a content pack actually that's releasing this Halloween. So William's on the last stages of getting it all wrapped up.
The last bits, yeah.
I know that there is a lot that you cannot say about this DLC, but on the area that you can actually say, what can you tell us to get us pumped about this DLC?
All right, me?
I can go back, right.
All right, well, William's going to finish it.
Definitely.
What can I say? It's called the Grim Troop. It is one of four DLC kind of things that we're planning for Hollow Knight. The first one came out earlier this year called Hidden Dreams. And the Grim Troop is our Halloween-themed expansion, which seems appropriate given the game has a fairly Halloween-y aesthetic to begin with. What do I say about it? Well, it features a character called Grim, and surprisingly enough, his troop. And the story is just about how they integrate into Hallownest briefly. And I don't want to say too much, because if I say anything more, I've probably said everything that is in there. The idea is, look, part of the idea is just that players who have already played the game or have been playing the game can, on and off, can come back in and experience a little bit of a new thing, but also, and experience something that's kind of nicely themed around the season. The other thing is, we have a lot of people who haven't played the game yet, so that is like Switch owners, so the Nintendo Switch, which is the platform that we're coming out on, we're currently working towards. When it comes out on there, the Grim Troop will be included. So the game that they get is even bigger than the game when it came out on PC. But the main reason we're doing it is just because we just like making these characters, and it's fun, and Halloween was a good framework, so we got to make weird new boss and weird new enemies and weird new friends, and that keeps us entertained.
Awesome. Also, what are the challenges that you have faced into trying to put this game from computer into the consoles and Nintendo Switch and all that?
Look, for me, it hasn't been that huge because it's been artistically, it hasn't had to change much. Technically, it's probably given us, or certainly given William, some time to just look at optimization, which just means like making the code cleaner, making behaviors cleaner, and just generally making it leaner and simpler. It's probably nothing that, it's nothing huge that players would perceive, but maybe it's just like teaching us good practice. And obviously this was our first commercial game, so and it was also a genre that we hadn't previously worked in, so we're just even now learning better ways of building things so that they run smoothly and all of that. It's highly technical stuff that I do not understand, is about the best way I can put it.
I can imagine. What was something that you didn't expect at all when you started all the games and your career, that became true and is really important in everything that you do?
Well, from my career, I never expected 2D animation to be as easy to produce as it is now. So I always thought it was when I began on paper and on a light box, and I remember the brief, doing that was time consuming, and I remember thinking, wow, okay, this is really something that takes skill and masses of time and patience and effort and a lot of technical construction, what with like bringing all of those drawings into a computer to assemble it all. Now it's literally just you sit on your laptop with a Wacom and you draw a bunch of pictures and in Photoshop, and it's there. You hit Spacebar a few hours later and it's done. So that was something pretty profound. And it means, I said this, but like being able to have a drawing that William or I have done on the whiteboard, and then 6 hours later having it be a character that runs and jumps and attacks or squawks or something, and is all in and alive is amazing, really. That's just I suppose that's like the benefit of technology and advances in technology, and it's, I don't know, I think that's quite amazing. For the game itself, I'm not sure. In terms of major challenges, it was just the thing about the game is it's like this game, and probably all games, no, actually not all games, but certainly games like ours, it's just thousands of simple things all jammed together, and like there's not necessarily one uber complicated part to any of it, but there's just massive quantity of everything, and then as a result, everything sort of can get a bit wobbly just by the amount of things that you're piling on top of one another.
On the other hand, what was something that you completely expected from all this experience that became true and is important?
Expected. I expected it to be a lot of fun, and it is a lot of fun. It's just very, very entertaining, and it's challenging, and I expected that, but it's not challenging in stressful ways. It's just challenging in the ways that you want it to be, which is, interesting technical challenges, interesting creative challenges that you can discuss and overcome, and that's really engaging. But yeah, the thing that I expected was it was going to be fun, and man, it's so much fun. It's like, it's also fun just to see that, like, now you have these things like Twitch and you have YouTube where people play the games and they stream them. You can actually watch people experiencing your content. Whereas like previously, when I was working in music videos and film and all of that kind of stuff, you make a thing and you put it out to the world and you might get comments on YouTube, but you don't get that direct sense of like how people are engaging with your content. You just, you stick it in a cinema and people sit in a dark room and you hope they're having a good time. But now you just go to Twitch and you see someone yelling and carrying on and like obviously having a good time, or obviously having a horrible, frustrating time, dying 1,000 times, and then having one moment of elation at the end that makes up for that. So that's very, very satisfying as a bit of a tangent to what we were saying.
Nice. A small question that I just remember before I forget. Spoiler alert, when you are getting the good ending, and pretty much Hornet comes and grabs the the boss, the Hollow Knight, she yells something that I listen as "get good." Was that on purpose?
The line was done by Makoto. She chose the words herself, which all I can say is she wouldn't be aware. I mean, I don't want to confirm or deny to like ruin any fun, but I doubt she would be aware of that get good concept, which is like an online meme sort of thing that game players use. And she doesn't play video games. So if she intended to say get good, she knows a lot more about video games than I assumed she knew about video games. And that is it.
When I listened to that, pretty much for me was like a warning for what was going to come, and felt surreal when I like that enemy felt like easy in comparison to the Radiance, and wow, like the difficulty went just way high.
Well, we probably wanted to do more things at that level of difficulty, but we just, I suppose, like, we didn't want to make a game that was so punishingly difficult that half the players just left midway through. So we figured there's one place that we're allowed to do that, and that's and this is obviously, we're talking about spoilers, but in a secret boss fight that can be engaged by super skilled players.
Also, in the Kickstarter page, there are in the achievements page, pretty much there are areas that it is saying that you're going to expand, like for example the Abyss. Are those expansions coming, or some of them, like, are you going to take it into a different direction?
We are going to go in a different direction. We didn't hit that because we didn't hit some of those stretch goals. Like, they were very late stretch goals. Yeah, we had rough considerations for them, but I think ultimately, once we knew that we weren't hitting those levels, we built the product. We built the world. I mean, it's not really. Yeah, we built the world without the consideration for that to be part of it. And I think that probably means that we won't explore that. The other part maybe to think about is that as two people, we could go and do all that, but that just means that we're going to be making Hollow Knight for the next 4 years while we keep adding to it. And what we really want to do is do all the Hollow Knight that we've promised, and the little extra bits that we just really can't help ourselves from doing. Close that book for a while and work on something completely different. Another game, but obviously like something that is its own world. And then, maybe we'd feel like returning to it in 10 years or something, and then the Abyss might be calling.
Definitely understandable. What are some of the most common mistakes that you see people making when they are starting to create games that they are not aware that they are making?
Well, we probably would have a hard time speaking to it because we're so new to to this ourselves. Like, this is our first major commercial product. But maybe, I mean, the obvious one is people just try and make something too big, which is funny to say when we made something that was enormous. But you mentioned earlier, or we were talking about it earlier, but it's okay to set a goal for something that is 2 hours long or 3 hours long and is a nice, simple, complete experience. Learn all the things that you will learn from that, including how to finish a product, and then perhaps move from there. But like I said, we're very early into the video game development area ourselves, so I don't want to make too many comments about it.
Definitely, I do believe the same as you, because there is this game that I love so much that is called Machinarium, and pretty much it's kind of like a puzzle game. But in the beginning, when you play, you probably take like 3 hours to finish it because you don't know like the puzzles. But once you know how to solve it, you can pretty much finish it in 1 hour. But it's still like the whole game is so. Even if it is a really short game, it's so beautiful that I really love that one.
Yeah, that is a wonderful game. They're Czech developer, are they? Amanita Design. I might be getting that wrong, but they actually do films as well, and they've done some other beautiful games. And they have that it's almost a slightly scrapbook aesthetic where they bring in lots of different parts, and they have a nice have a wonderful quality, like warm quality to their animation. But yes, it's a very good example. Like all of the little games that they make are contained around, and they have like one or two nice simple ideas that everything builds from. And Machinarium was just a little city of robots, and you got 2 or 3 hours of experience, and it was fantastic. And it's a wonderful world to return to, even if you've solved all the puzzles.
There is this question that I ask, but I think I'm going to modify it this time, because pretty much I think the answer to this question is what you already told us and what you already went through. And pretty much it will be like doing the same thing that you did. But let's change it. Let's say you wake up in a new dimension where you have your team, you have all your experience, all your knowledge, or your tools, but Hollow Knight hasn't been made and nobody knows about you. What will you make different this time, considering all the experience that you got now?
Well, I mean, what would we certainly we just wouldn't make Hollow Knight again, because we've already done it, and the joy of it is the making of it. The releasing it is a joy as well, but certainly the making of it is the most fun. So the answer is we would just take the experience, and we would probably just make the next game on our list of many games that we want to make, and then that's totally fine. If we have the memory of the building of that game, then that's pretty much what you're after anyway.
Great. Is there any tip that you would like to give people who want to create games all over the world that we haven't talked about this?
Well, I think we covered almost all of it. But yeah, just if you want to make a game and you're not, just start with something simple. Start with a simple engine. And both William and I would highly recommend game jams being short and being community events, which just gives you that extra motivation because you're around other people doing the same thing and passionate about the same thing.
If people want to find you online, where would be the best place to do so?
Well, they can find Team Cherry online at teamcherry.com.au. They can find us at Team Cherry Games on Twitter. They can find Hollow Knight at hollowknight.com if they just want to learn a bit about the game itself. Other than that, you can't find me online because I'm not online very often, and I certainly don't have Facebook or Twitter or any of that stuff myself. And that is it. William may have a Facebook, but I wouldn't know it because I'm not on there. So I think that's it. Oh, I suppose the other thing is, if anyone's interested to purchase Hollow Knight, you can currently buy it on Steam or Humble Bundle or GOG, which is Good Old Games. Maybe they're just called GOG now. And it's also coming to the Switch, the Nintendo's platform, in the near but unannounced future.
This is something also that I consider really great, that the game just costs like $15. To be honest, I would have gladly paid like $50 for this game.
Oh, thank you. I mean, we I don't think we could think about charging more for it because it didn't cost us that much to make, and we just really wanted as many people to play it as we could. So if being cheaper means more people will play our games, then that's a good system to follow.
Definitely. I'm going to link all the resources that you mentioned here into the website of the interview, and I'll have it there for all the trailers for the game and also the new trailer for the Green Troop.
Cool. Thank you, Rodrigo.
Thanks a lot to you for giving us your time and giving us your knowledge. It's really appreciated, Ari.
No, thank you. Thanks for talking. And and I'm sure William would say thank you, though he's engrossed in his work with big headphones on. So
yeah, I understand that message. So this has been the last episode of the Creative Hostler Show. If you like it, please click the like button below and also share it with your friends. Until next time.